Welcome back to Simbright Fashion Academy YouTube channel for another interesting tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll be teaching you how to sew this flared skirt with front buttons as well as the top as well. So here you can see this beautiful dress. It has two side pockets, it has a center front on the skirt piece, and this is actually trending. So I'll be teaching you the tips and tricks to sewing this beautiful flared skirt and its top. So this is what I came out with. You can see the buttons are all over everywhere. It's actually a crop top for this top and a flared skirt for the skirt. Okay, so you can see what we got right here. I'm so proud of this dress. It looks so beautiful and gorgeous, and you can use it for any occasion of your choice. I didn't have a complete button anyway, so that is why I was unable to place my buttons on the skirt piece completely. So if this is what you want to learn in this class, I will encourage you to stay till the end of this tutorial to learn the tips and tricks to making this flared dress. To start up this tutorial, we'll be drafting on our paper. So the first thing you do is to create 2.5 inches button allowance. So my button allowance from the center front is 2.5 inches. So I just drew the line from the top to the full length. Then you are going to measure your chest line, which is your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5, and your waistline, my own from shoulder is 17 inches. So I ruled my chest line and ruled my waistline, and this is the shoulder line. So that's my shoulder, my chest, and the waist line. So if you are making a normal crop top, it will end at the waistline. But for this tutorial, we are going to measure 5 inches below our waistline. So from the 5 inches, we are going to use 2 inches for the hemming of this crop top. So finally, the total length of my top was 20 inches. So I'm going to measure my neck width at 4 inches and my neck depth at 3.5 inches. Then I'm going to connect 4 by 3.5 inches. That is my front neckline. And my shoulder divided by 2, I marked it on the shoulder and on the chest line. I came down by 1 inch for my shoulder drop and connected a straight line to the chest line. And I'll get the midpoint of my armhole, and I went in by 0.75. My bust circumference divided by 4, I marked it on the chest line. I added half an inch for ease. Then I took what I have on the chest line to the waistline and to the full length. Okay, so you just take it a straight line like that from chest to the full length. So the front piece is ready. So I extended the button allowance. So the next thing we are going to do is to fold in the button allowance, because we want to start drafting the center back. So the center back, I folded in the button allowance. So for the center back, is going to be on fold. My neck depth is 1.5 inches for the center back, for the back piece. So I connected it to the 4 inches neck width, and I came in by 0.5 inch for my armhole, and I'm going to connect it to the bust area. So I drafted front and back, as you can see right here. So we are using one pattern for the front piece and the back piece as well. So now at the mid armhole, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. So that means from the shoulder, I measured 6 inches. You can also make it 6.5 if you want. And I came in by 1.5, and my pocket width is 4 inches, and the pocket depth, I used 2.5 inches for the pocket depth. But later, I changed it to 2.25, which is 2.25, because the 2.5 was looking somehow, big for the width. So I used 2.25 for the width, for the depth of the pocket, and 4 inches for the width of the pocket. So it depends on your size for this pocket anyway. For me, from the center front, I came out by 1.5, but you can come out by 2 inches or 2.5 depending on your body size. So here I'm done cutting out the pattern, as you can see. So next is to place it on fabric. So I'm using the remaining part of my 3.5 yards. So this is 1.5 yards I'm using 1.5 yards for this project. So if you have not watched the skirt tutorial, I will also encourage you to watch the skirt tutorial. So here I'm going to cut out my seam allowances. I added 1/2 inch to the hemline and on the neckline, and 1 inch on the side of this dress. So this is the back piece. The back piece is ready, so we are going to cut out the front piece. So I brought back the button allowance and I fold it in to cut the neckline for the front. So if you open it, this is what you have, and I cut out the armhole for the front as well. So I went ahead to place this pattern on my fabric. So I brought my fabric and folded it and placed my pattern on it. So I'm just trying to arrange the fabric, so I'll also have some leftovers for another little project anyway. So I keep adjusting it to place the center front. So I placed it and I secured with my pin. So I'm going to cut it out right now and add my seam allowances. So I've added my seam allowances. So I'm supposed to actually divide or cut out these mid points because I am going to attach my pocket to it. So what I did was to lift up the pepper and add 1/2 inch. Okay, cut out the pepper. We are going to recut the yoke. I will call it a yoke right now. So I added 1/2 inch to this part. So I'm going to now cut out my yoke. So I'll go ahead to cut it out. So I am separating the center front area because I placed my fabric on fold. So I just want to divide them so it will be 2 pieces. So here is what I got at the end of the day. So I'll just set it aside and we'll proceed to the cutting of the yoke piece of this tutorial. So I made a notch at the button allowance. Please don't forget, because we'll use it to fold the buttons. So I've cut out the yoke and I added 1/2 inch all through. So to cut out the facing, we are going to cut out a facing for this dress. So I have 2 pieces at that point, and I'm going to trace what I have on the yoke. I'll go ahead and trace it right now. So I traced on the neckline and I went to the center front button area. I now trace to the shoulder line and the yoke line. So I made a notch at that point. So at every point in time, make a notch at the button space. So I've separated the yoke piece. So I'm measuring 4 inches. From 4 inches, that's what the width I want my yoke to be, because I'm still going to use part of it to hem the yoke or to weave the yoke. So I used 4 inches all around. But when I came to the front piece, I used 3 inches because it was not up to 4 inches. So you can see what I have as my facing. So I'm going to create the facing for the back. I placed my fabric on fold and dropped my fabric on it. So I secured with my pin and traced out the neckline and the shoulder line. Of course, you are familiar with this part, but I'm showing everything so you see how this beautiful top is made with this skirt. So here I am going to take 4 inches too. So I'll just taper it to 3 inches at the center back. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place this yoke. I'm going to place the facing and stitch the neckline at 1/2 inch. So I'll stitch the neckline at 1/2 inch and then I'll bring it back after stitching. So after stitching, I made a notch on the neckline because that part is covered, and I flipped my seams to top stitch. So here I'm done top stitching. I gave it a good press. You can see what I got. So we'll start working on the front piece. So for the front piece right now, this is my yoke and this is my facing for the front piece. So the next thing we are going to do now is to sew the pockets. So make sure you make notches on the pocket points, okay? On the main dress, make notches on where you are going to attach the pocket. So the width of my pocket now, I added 1 inch to the 4 inches, which is 5 inches. And the depth, I added half an inch for stitching. So after stitching, this is what I got. So I'm going to turn it to the right side. So I turned it to the right side because I stitched half an inch. So this is on fold though. I place it on fold. It's easier to be on fold than to cut it in pieces. So I made notches on that point, and this is where I'm going to place it and stitch. So I went ahead and gave it a good press. So I'm going to separate the two front bodies right now, and I'm going to place on those notches I made, I'm going to place my will I call it a pocket facing or what? Okay, so whatever it is, you know what I'm referring to. So I'll just secure it with my pin right there. So I will go over to lay the yoke on it. So I'll pick up the yoke itself and I'm going to lay it this way. This is how it's supposed to be. So I'll flip it and sew at half an inch. So I secured with my pins before I proceed to the stitching. So I'm done stitching and this is what I got. So this is my pocket facing, as you can see. So I'm going to place my facing to face the neckline. So I'm going to face the neckline. I'm going to stitch at half an inch, then make my notches on the neckline as usual, and then I'll go ahead and top stitch. So after stitching, this is what I got right here. I made a notch and I top stitched, and I'm going to give it a good press. So this is what it looks like. So the next thing we are going to do is to lay the back piece to the front piece and sew the shoulder seam line. So this is how I like to sew my shoulder seam line. I'll pick up 3 pieces together and wrap it with the facing, and I'll proceed to sew half an inch. So I'm going to do the same for the other. So this is what I got after I'm done stitching. So the next thing we are going to do now is to create the button allowance. So the button allowance is 2.5 inches. So please try and measure it, because at this point the notch will not be there to guide us. So I use the pin to identify the 2.5. So I'm going to first fold in half an inch and now fold 1 inch to the notch. So I have the notch on the down piece. So I folded half an inch and 1 inch to that notch, and I top stitched on top of it. So I did the same for the other piece as well. So fold in half an inch and then 1 inch. Make sure you secure with your pins, or else it will be difficult for you to stitch. So I make sure I secure with my pins all through, so it will be very easy for me to stitch at the end of the day. So I really took my time to stitch, to secure with my pins for easy sewing. So here I'm done sewing and I gave it a good press. So this is what I have for the button space. So the next thing I'll do is to close up the sides at 1 inch, and the dress is ready. So next, I added 1 inch on the seam line and 3.5 inches on the bicep line. So just add 3.5 inches on your bicep line. If you're on a smaller size, 2.5 inches is good because it's a free sleeve. So I mark the back points and I'm going to fold in my sleeve. The length of my sleeve, I used 10 inches in total. So when I folded, I got 9 inches remaining. Okay, I got 9 inches remaining, the length of the sleeve. And like I explained on the width of the sleeve, I added extra 2.5 inches on the biceps point. So just follow what I'm doing here. You understand what I'm doing. So I've turned my sleeve. I'm going to attach my sleeve. So I'll turn the dress and insert the sleeve inside it. I'm going to pin at the shoulder seam line and at the armhole line, and I'll go to my machine to sew round. So after sewing, this is a beautiful top. So this top is actually very gorgeous. So the next thing I'm going to do is to mark out my button spaces. So you just mark your button spaces accordingly. I use 3 inches spacing for it, and I'm going to tack it. So that is how we'll come to the end of this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next.